In this session, we're going to take a look at some of the other features on the transportation form. We're going to start up with the series of the 9 buttons up above. We're going to look at clinic list. This gains you access to a list of all of your clinics that are currently entered into the system with the ability to edit or inactivate a particular location. You can search for different clinics by their address. So if I type in 100, it's going to show me any clinic that has 100 within it. I can select that clinic, edit it, and modify any of the information on the screen, and then save it. I can also inactivate a clinic. We don't allow you to delete a clinic, only inactivate one. So I can say that this clinic is no longer active. We have a client history button, and this opens up another form, and you can type in the name of any client that's currently in the system, and it will show you history of all the trips that have been entered in and serviced for that member. We have a eligibility module that allows you to create and send files up to minutes. And how this works is we want to create a file, and it allows you to specify a date range. So you could check eligibility for one particular day or one particular month. So this will show all the trips from July 1st to July 26th. It also tells me the number of clients that have an MA number and how many are missing genders, because those are criteria that are necessary to get a valid response back from DHS. Once we identify the trips that we want to run eligibility on, we can then select all of them, choose a provider ID, and click on check eligibility. This then puts a file out into your export location. It would typically be placed on your desktop, and then you can take that file and upload it to DHS. Once the response file came back, you would come here and read that response file in. Once it's read in, you would then have a list of clients associated with what you imported to DHS, as well as if they're eligible, and if they're not eligible, and if they are eligible, who they're P-mapped over to, Blue Cross or UCare, or if they're straight MA. Next to clinic list is drivers, and this will show you a list of all your drivers currently entered into the system. There's some filters up above here. You can filter out in a number of different ways. You can also search by name, and it would bring you up all the drivers with that particular name. You can edit the driver's information if you ever feel it necessary, but we'll go through the driver form in more detail in correlation with the payroll process in another session. Right beneath the drivers button is a vehicles button, and this will open up the table where all your vehicles are listed. Again, we'll go into more detail in another session on this vehicle tab, but this would be the location that you would go to if you are utilizing driver portals, GPS devices, and linking all of those items together. You can access all your client records. You can search by name or insurance ID. So this brought up all clients with the last name of test. You can also use the alphabet up here to look at all of your clients and hammer it down by letter. If you double click on one of the records, it opens up the client form, and all of their demographic information is listed in here, as well as their insurance payer, and if you click on edit on the record, you can see their insurance number. You have the ability to manage the different statuses within the system. So if I click on manage statuses, we have trip statuses, and you can add statuses or remove statuses, and you can also indicate different colors with the statuses. You can manage your leg statuses. But more commonly than trip status and leg statuses are the transportation statuses. And any of these can be modified. You can't delete any statuses, but you can inactivate them. You can add new statuses. So I'll add a new status now. And what these checkboxes represent are the following. If status to a trip and you don't want driver costs to appear on reports for that, you just check the box. If this is a canceled status, so I've seen where a number of clients will have different types of cancellations, you can indicate that this particular status is a canceled trip. Particular statuses can be billable. So for example, we have a status in here called ready to bill, and that one's marked as billable. So if a trip has any other status than the ones that we've identified as billable, it cannot be sent to billing until that checkbox is updated. We have the ability to only allow certain statuses to be changed to ready to bill. So for example, trip might be set to scheduled, and we want to allow a scheduled status to go to ready to bill. So we would identify it in that way. So if I check on scheduled, we have it marked as ready to bill, but if we look at canceled, it's not marked. It's not marked to allow to be changed to ready to bill. And then finally, inactive. Payroll processing we'll go through in another session. We have a number of reports on the transportation form. Contractor visit report. And before I proceed with the different reports, not all of these buttons and reports are viewable or available to all users. You have to have certain levels of access to the software in order to view all of these reports. So if you're into the system and you're not seeing some of these reports, it's due to the fact that you have a lesser level of security, and you're not being granted access to those. So contractor visit report, that allows you to specify a date range, and you can identify one particular driver, or if you leave this blank, it will pull all your drivers, as well as you can identify a pair. And this will produce a report. This also calculates payroll at the same time, so the message we're seeing is indicating that we don't have pay rates set up for this driver. If I had the pay rate set up for this driver, the report would show the driver cost at that time. So a report is generated based on the criteria that I typed into the filters, and here's all the reports for all the trip detail for Jacob Luger from 7/1 to 7/14. And again, if I had all the pay rates in, all the calculations would have populated. You notice there's a few zeros within this report. The contractor pay date report, this allows you to come in and specify a pay date and pull up the different types of payroll reports. But we'll go through this in more detail with the payroll processing session. We have status reports. This allows you to again specify a date range, identify a contractor or a driver, and then you can specify different types of statuses. You can choose multiple statuses or leave them blank to choose all. And then you can sort the report by status, employee, date, or payer. And you can either print it or export it out to a CSV file. And then when it comes time to print, you have some options there as well. You can print claims that have only been paid by the insurance company, print claims that have not been exported, which means they have not been billed, print claims that have not been paid, or you can print by the status selection. So if I choose ready to bill and then duplicate, it's going to group those trips up in that fashion. So duplicate will be all listed in one section of the report, ready to bill in the next. And then I can also change the sort. On trip list, again, you can specify a date. And you can specify statuses. So you just want to see anything sent to billing for a clinic with a particular address. So if you wanted to pull detail of a report of all trips to a particular location, you could either enter in part of the address or all of the address. The more detail you enter in for the address, the less results that you'd get. But if I enter in 100, it's going to give me any trip in the system from 7/1 to 7/14 with 100 in the address. And then you can sort it in a couple of different ways here. And you can also export and print that report. Clinic trip list is a little bit more simpler report. Again, you can just put in your date range and you can choose a clinic and print a report. So it would show you all of the trips entered into the system for that particular clinic. This audit report allows you to pull trips based on a date range. You can specify a client and a payer, and you can either print it by the client or print it by the driver. Those two buttons will base the sort of the report. We have a CON expiration report. That's a certificate of need. So you can specify a date range and print the report, and it will show you any CONs that may be expiring in that given time frame. We also have a Medica export. This will produce the spreadsheet that Medica requires for their monthly reporting. You specify a date range, you apply filter, it will show you any Medica trips in the system for that date range. You can then sort in a number of ways. I tend to sort by billed, and you can select all and export them, or you can uncheck ones that you don't want to send into the report. So for example, you might have some cancels or some stuff that's scheduled. So you'll have to make sure that you specify which trips you want to be exported. And finally, within the reports menu, there's a profit and loss report. And this allows you to type again in a date range. So if you want to know kind of your profit and loss for the month of July, And then you can specify multiple statuses. So if you just want to know everything that's been sent to billing, and you can do a summary or detail. This report does take a little bit of time to run, as it's also calculating the driver's cost within the report to get the basis for the profit and loss. But you also have the ability to export this or print it. Alright, the next thing we're going to look at is in the center of the screen here, you have the ability to filter out the list below. So you have a number of different filters. You can search by insured, and you can type in either the name of the person, and it will show you that, or you can type in their insurance ID as well to get the same result. You can also filter by status, driver, trip status, payer. You can search for only multiple destination trips, one-way trips, if the trip sheet's been received, or any trips that may be missing an authorization number. One important thing to note is if you can make changes down here to the status field, only if there's no data populated up above in the gray area. So if I double click on a trip to bring up the details, I can no longer make a change down below here until the entry above has been cleared. So in order to do that, I would click Clear Entry, and then that would allow me to modify the schedule below. Double click on any client name and it will bring the information up here on the list. And you don't need to clear it in between. You can just click from trip to trip. There's a number of ways to sort the list below. You can sort it by driver, time, payer, client, status, and exported status. Down at the bottom here, but beneath the list, you have the ability to delete a trip. This does require the use of an administrative password to delete the trip. And how you would do that is you would double click on the trip, click on delete. It says, are you sure you want to do this? And then you would enter in your administrator password. Transportation record was deleted. I'd also like to mention that we don't technically delete trips from the system. They actually get put into an archive table. So any trip that is deleted from the transportation form here, or the list, can be recalled back into the transportation form. And how you would do that, as well as we also have the ability to archive trips. But if we scroll down to the bottom left hand corner, we kind of hid this button, but you have the ability to archive trips. So we click on archive, and we can either archive them or see them. And if you needed to restore anything, you'd want to click on see archives. And you can see archived or you can see deleted and put in a date range. Select all of them or select certain ones that you want, and then you'd restore those records. That also requires a password, an administrative password, to do that. If we go back to archive trips again, and let's say we wanted to archive some trips, let's say something's over a year old, it requires the administrative password to do this. And you can put a date range in and archive those trips. And then really the last thing that we're going to look at on the transportation form is the ability to assign a driver. So one of the ways to do that is on the list itself. You can either drop down the driver one column and choose your driver, or you can double click on the column and type in the driver for each leg. If a vehicle is assigned, the vehicle will populate, and then you can save and close. And then that driver is assigned. And as soon as the driver is assigned, that trip becomes viewable on the driver portal. You can also assign driver by groups. So it's telling me to select from the list first. So you could sort or filter out this list in a number of ways. Check the trips that you want to assign to a driver and click assign, and you can choose the driver. And it's asking you if you want to just do leg 1. You have the option to do just the unique legs or all the legs. And if I click OK and close, the driver is now assigned to that trip. You can also assign a driver by client. So if we put in a client's name and show the trips, here's all the trips for that client in the system. We can select them all or just select certain ones, and it is broken out by leg here. So I'll select all, and I can then assign a driver. And then that driver is assigned to that trip. That concludes this session of the transportation form overview.